Number 6 says, in lines 72 to 78, the author describes an inheritance of fear. He uses the term to indicate that his brother's fear of the abracadabra costume was what? So looking at those lines, it says, we're going to start a little bit before there. So if you start with line 69, it says, but I perceived now that he had had a real shock the first time he had seen the mask. And though he was then a big schoolboy, the terror was indelible. Who can say of what old inheritance of fear that horror of the great ape-like countenance was the sign? He had no associations of fear with apes, but it must have been, I think, some dim, old, primeval terror dating from some ancestral encounter with a forest monster. So it's saying that he's kind of inheriting this fear of this abracadabra costume from something back in the day that he can't even remember. A says archetypal. Now, you might not know what that word means, but we can leave it in because it's totally a possibility here. So that gets a question mark. B says artificial. So the inheritance of fear is real. Like, we don't know where it's coming from. It's back in the day, but it's definitely real. So B is going to be out. C says hereditary. So you might have gone with C as hereditary because you're thinking inheritance, hereditary, but it's not actually a literal something that's genetic. You're not inheriting it genetically. They have this fear from something that they can't even remember, but it's not hereditary, like passed on in the gene pool. D says an imitation of a scene from a book. So they're not sure what this fear is coming from. So the inheritance of fear is not necessarily something from a book. So D is out. And E says ape-like. So ape-like was used in the sentence, but it's not describing the fear. It's describing the costume, so E is also out. So even if you had no idea what A was, it's the only one left, and it's actually our answer because it goes back to something back in the day, and it coincides with the words ancestral used in that specific sentence.